In the heart of Chicago, where skyscrapers pierced the gray autumn sky and the wind carried whispers of ambition, Sarah Bennett scrubbed the marble floors of Harper Enterprises' towering headquarters. Her hands, calloused from years of cleaning, moved rhythmically, the mop gliding across the polished surface as her thoughts drifted to her 6-year-old son, Ethan, waiting at home in their cramped South Side apartment. Sarah, a single mother at 28, had learned to carry the weight of her world alone. Her dark hair was tied back in a messy bun, and her hazel eyes, though tired, held a quiet strength. 5 years ago, her life had unraveled when she discovered her fiancé James Carter cheating with a co-worker. Pregnant and heartbroken, she'd dropped out of college, choosing Ethan over her dreams of a business degree. Now her days were a blur of minimum-wage work and bedtime stories, but she clung to the hope that her son would have a better future. Tonight she'd promised Ethan pizza, a rare treat on her tight budget, and the thought of his smile kept her going through the late shift. As Sarah pushed her cleaning cart toward the executive floor, the elevator dinged, and a man stepped out, his presence jarring in the sterile silence. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a worn flannel shirt that hung loosely over faded jeans. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and his green eyes caught the fluorescent light as he bent to pick up a pen that had rolled from his pocket. Sarah, instinctively helpful, knelt to grab it first. Their hands brushed, and a spark of something, recognition maybe, flashed through her. "Thanks," he said, his voice low and warm, offering a crooked smile. "No problem," Sarah replied, handing him the pen. His name tag read Mike H. Janitor, but something about him felt out of place, his posture too confident, his gaze too sharp for the role. "Long shift?" he asked, lingering. Sarah nodded, wary but drawn to his easy demeanor. "Always is. You new here?" He shrugged. "Just filling in. Name's Michael." They exchanged small talk, and Sarah found herself laughing for the first time in weeks, the sound foreign in the empty hallway. Their conversation was cut short when Sarah's supervisor, stormed in, her heels clicking like gunfire. Bennett, less chatting, more cleaning, she snapped, her eyes narrowing at Michael. "And you new guy, get to the break room. It's a mess." Michael nodded, unbothered, and disappeared down the hall. Sarah returned to her work, but Clara's voice lingered, sharp with disdain. "Don't get cozy with strays, Sarah. You've got enough problems." The words stung, a reminder of the whispers that followed her at Harper Enterprises' gossip about her scandalous past as a college dropout with a kid. Sarah swallowed the hurt, focusing on the floor, but her mind kept drifting to Michael. There was something about him, a quiet intensity that felt both familiar and unsettling. The next morning, Sarah's life took an unexpected turn. Her father, Tom Bennett, a gruff mechanic with a penchant for meddling, called her to the family's small diner in Logan Square. Over greasy coffee, he dropped a bombshell: he'd arranged a marriage for her. "It's for your own good, Sarah," he said, his voice heavy with judgment. "Ethan needs a father, and you can't keep scraping by. The guy's solid, works at your company. You meet him tonight." Sarah's stomach churned. She'd sworn off men after James, whose betrayal still burned. "I don't need a husband." "Dad," she protested. Tom's face hardened. "You're embarrassing the family living like this. Do it for Ethan." Defeated, Sarah agreed to meet the man, dreading the idea of a stranger stepping into her son's life. That evening, at a dimly lit bar near the Chicago River, Sarah waited, her heart pounding. To her shock, Michael walked in looking as surprised as she felt. "You're Tom's daughter?" he asked, his brow furrowing. Sarah nodded, confusion swirling. "And you're the guy my dad picked." Michael ran a hand through his hair, a nervous laugh escaping. "Seems like it. Look, I owe your dad a favor. He helped me out when I was down on my luck. But I'm not here to force anything." Sarah studied him, her instincts warring. He seemed genuine, but trust came hard. Still, the thought of Ethan growing up with a father figure tugged at her. "Let's just talk," she said finally. They spent hours sharing stories, Sarah about Ethan's love for superhero comics, Michael about his travels, though he was vague about his past. By the end of the night, against her better judgment, Sarah agreed to a quick courthouse marriage, if only to appease her father. "No strings," she warned. Michael nodded. No strings. The next week, Sarah and Michael stood before a judge exchanging vows in a sterile room that smelled of old paper. Ethan, clutching a Spider-Man toy, watched wide-eyed. "Is he my new dad?" he whispered. Sarah forced a smile, unsure herself. Michael moved into her tiny apartment, sleeping on the couch, keeping his promise of no pressure. He cooked pancakes for Ethan, helped with homework, and even fixed a leaky faucet, earning the boy's adoration. Sarah, though, kept her distance, haunted by James's betrayal. At work, she noticed Michael's knack for solving problems, rewriting a delivery mix-up, calming an irate client with a few words. "How's a janitor so good at that?" she wondered aloud one day. Michael just grinned, picked up a few tricks along the way. Meanwhile, James Carter re-entered Sarah's life like a storm. Now a rising manager at Harper Enterprises, he cornered her in the break room, his slick suit a stark contrast to her cleaning uniform. "You married that loser, Mike?" he sneered, his blue eyes cold. "I made a mistake, Sarah. Come back to me. I can give you and Ethan a real life." Sarah's fists clenched. "You cheated, James. You don't get to waltz back in." His smile twisted. "You'll regret this. That guy's nothing." As James stalked off, Sarah's resolve hardened, but doubt crept in. Was she wrong to trust Michael? That night she found a memo on her cart. A promotion to junior assistant, effective immediately. How she gasped, showing Michael. He shrugged, but his eyes twinkled. "Maybe someone noticed you're good at your job." Unbeknownst to Sarah, Michael Harper was no janitor. As the secret president of Harper Enterprises, he'd built the company from a small startup into a global powerhouse. 5 years ago, his mother, Eleanor Harper, died under mysterious circumstances, and Michael suspected his adoptive brother, Robert Carter, and Robert's son, James, were involved. To investigate without drawing attention, he'd taken a low-level job at his own company, using his influence to quietly support Sarah. The promotion was his doing, a way to ease her burdens without revealing his identity. But the deeper he dug, the more he uncovered financial records, hinting at Robert's shady deals, whispers of a cover-up. Michael kept his findings from Sarah, not wanting to drag her into his dangerous quest. At home, Sarah began to soften toward Michael. One evening, as they watched Ethan draw superheroes, she caught Michael sketching a perfect Batman logo. "You're good," she said, surprised. He chuckled. "Used to draw with my mom." His voice carried a weight that made Sarah pause. "What happened to her?" she asked gently. Michael's jaw tightened. "She got sick." "It's complicated." Sarah didn't push, sensing his pain. Instead, she shared her own story, how James's betrayal left her pregnant and alone, how she'd kept a ring from a stranger she'd met one reckless night, a man who vanished by morning. "It's all I have of Ethan's real dad," she admitted, showing Michael the silver band with an intricate H engraving. His breath caught, but he said nothing, his mind racing. Could it be? As weeks passed, Sarah's promotion brought new challenges. Clara, jealous of Sarah's rise, spread rumors that she'd charmed her way up. At a company meeting, James publicly questioned Sarah's qualifications, smirking as colleagues whispered. Humiliated, Sarah fled to the rooftop, where Michael found her. "Don't let them win," he said, his voice steady. "You're better than they think." His words gave her strength, and she returned to work, determined to prove herself. But James wasn't done. He cornered Michael in the parking lot, his tone menacing. "Stay away from Sarah, or I'll make sure you both regret it." Michael met his gaze unflinching. "Try me." James laughed, unaware he was threatening the man who controlled Harper Enterprises. By the chapter's end, Sarah and Michael's bond grew, though secrets lingered. Sarah, unaware of Michael's true identity, began to trust him, drawn to his kindness and Ethan's love for him. Michael, meanwhile, uncovered a lead, a hospital record suggesting his mother's death wasn't natural. As he planned his next move, he watched Sarah tuck Ethan into bed, her laughter filling the small apartment. For the first time in years, he felt home. But danger loomed. James and Robert were closing in, and Sarah was caught in the crosshairs of a truth Michael wasn't ready to share. The Chicago skyline shimmered under a late November drizzle, its lights blurring through the rain-streaked windows of Harper Enterprises. Sarah Bennett, now a junior assistant, sat at her new desk, a small victory in a world that seemed determined to push her down. Her promotion had sparked whispers among her co-workers, their eyes sharp with envy or suspicion. Sarah, at 28, was used to judgment. Her status as a single mother had always drawn stares, but the weight of it felt heavier now. She adjusted the nameplate on her desk, her fingers tracing the letters of her name, and glanced at a photo of Ethan, her 6-year-old son, grinning in his Spider-Man pajamas. For him, she'd endure anything. But the whispers weren't her only problem. James Carter, her ex-fiancé, and now a manager at Harper Enterprises, had doubled his efforts to undermine his charm, masking a vendetta. And then there was Michael Harper, her new husband, whose quiet support both comforted and confused her. He was still sleeping on the couch in her South Side apartment, a janitor by all appearances, yet his confidence and occasional flashes of authority made Sarah question what he wasn't telling her. The morning started with a sting. Clara, Sarah's former supervisor, now demoted to her level, leaned against Sarah's desk, her voice dripping with disdain. "So, how'd you pull it off?" "Bennett, sleep your way to a desk job." The words hit like a slap, and Sarah's cheeks burned. "I earned this, Clara," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Unlike some, I don't need to tear others down to feel big." Clara smirked, tossing her hair. "Keep telling yourself that. Everyone knows you're just a dropout with a kid." Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed a text from Michael Lunch at the diner. "Ethan's with me." The thought of her son's giggle and Michael's easy smile softened the sting of Clara's words. She typed back, "Be there at noon," and refocused on her work, a report for a new project bid that could secure her position. At the diner, Ethan bounded into Sarah's arms, his small hands clutching a drawing of a superhero labeled Mike. Michael slid into the booth across from her, his flannel shirt rumpled, but his green eyes bright. "He's been talking about you all morning," Michael said, ruffling Ethan's hair. Sarah smiled, but her mind was elsewhere. "Clara's making my life hell at work," she admitted, stirring her coffee. "She thinks I don't deserve the promotion." Michael's jaw tightened, a flicker of something dark crossing his face. "She's wrong. You're smarter than half the suits in that building." His words were firm, almost too certain, and Sarah caught a glimpse of that same intensity she'd noticed the night they met. "How do you know?" she teased, half expecting a vague answer. But Michael just grinned. "I see you, Sarah. That's enough." Ethan interrupted, holding up his drawing. "Mike's my superhero, Mom." "He fixed my bike." Sarah laughed, but a nagging question lingered. Why did Michael seem so much more than a janitor? Back at Harper Enterprises, the atmosphere grew tense. Sarah's report was due, and James, overseeing the project, made a show of scrutinizing her work in front of the team. "Not bad for a beginner," he said loudly, his smile cold. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, Sarah. You're still learning. The room tittered, and Sarah's hands clenched under the table. She wanted to snap back, but Ethan's face flashed in her mind. She needed this job. Later in the break room, James cornered her again. "You're wasting your time with that loser husband," he said, leaning too close. "I'm moving up, Sarah. I could take care of you and Ethan." Sarah stepped back, her voice icy. "I'd rather starve than go back to you." James's eyes narrowed. "You'll regret that." That evening, Sarah's world tilted. She was tidying her apartment when she found a small box in Michael's jacket pocket, hidden under a pile of Ethan's toys. Inside was a silver ring, its intricate H engraving catching the light. Her breath caught. It was identical to the ring she'd kept from that reckless night, 5 years ago, the night she'd met a stranger who left before dawn, leaving her pregnant with Ethan. Her heart raced as she clutched the ring, memories flooding back. Could Michael be? No, it was impossible, but the coincidence gnawed at her. When Michael came home carrying groceries and joking with Ethan, Sarah hesitated, then slipped the ring back into his pocket. She needed answers, but not tonight. Meanwhile, Michael was unraveling secrets of his own. As the hidden president of Harper Enterprises, he'd spent years building the company while investigating his mother Eleanor's death. A recent lead, a hospital record accessed through a trusted contact, suggested she'd been given an experimental drug that triggered her fatal heart attack. The trail pointed to Robert Carter, his adoptive brother, and James Roberts' ambitious son. Michael's blood boiled at the thought. Robert had always resented him, the biological son, who stood in the way of his inheritance. Now, posing as a janitor, Michael was close to exposing them, but he had to move carefully. He'd also arranged Sarah's promotion through a discreet call to his assistant, Clyde, ensuring no one traced it back to him. But protecting Sarah was getting complicated. She was too sharp, and her questions about his past were growing. The next day, danger struck. Sarah got a frantic call from Ethan's school. He hadn't been picked up. Panic seized her as she rushed to the school, only to find a note slipped under her car's wiper. "Want your kid? Come to the old warehouse on 47th Street. Alone. Her hands shook as she dialed Michael, who answered on the first ring. "I'm on my way," he said, his voice calm but edged with steel. Sarah drove to the warehouse, her heart-pounding visions of Ethan's scared face haunting her. Inside the dim, rusted building, she found Ethan tied to a chair, his eyes wide but brave. A masked figure, James, she realized with a chill, stepped forward, his voice distorted. "You should have chosen me, Sarah." Before she could respond, Michael burst in, moving with a speed and precision that stunned her. He tackled James, disarming him in seconds, and untied Ethan, who clung to him. "You okay, buddy?" Michael asked, his voice soft but firm. Ethan nodded, tears streaking his face. As police sirens wailed in the distance, James, unmasked and furious, spat, "You'll pay for this, Mike." Michael's eyes were cold. "You're done, Carter." The police arrived, taking James into custody for questioning, but Sarah knew this wasn't over. Back home, she tucked Ethan into bed, her hands still trembling. Michael sat with her in the kitchen, his silence heavy. "How did you know how to do that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He hesitated, then said, "I've had some training." It was a half-truth, and Sarah knew it. She pulled out the ring from her pocket, holding it up. "This is yours, isn't it? I found one just like it years ago." From Ethan's father. Michael's face paled, his eyes locked on the ring. For a moment, he said nothing, then nodded. "Sarah, I think I'm that man, but I need to be sure." The revelation hit Sarah like a tidal wave. 5 years ago, she'd met a man at a bar, grieving and reckless after James's betrayal. They'd spent one night together, and he'd left the ring behind, vanishing before she could ask his name. Now, staring at Michael, she saw the same jawline, the same quiet intensity. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, her voice shaking. Michael ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't know, Sarah. I was out of it that night. My mom had just died, and I was a mess. I left for Europe the next day, and I never knew about you or Ethan." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, anger and relief warring inside her. "You're his father," she whispered, the weight of it settling in. Michael reached for her hand, but she pulled back. "I need time," she said, standing. "Just keep him safe." The next day at work, Sarah threw herself into her project bid, determined to prove her worth despite the chaos. But James, out on bail, escalated his attacks. He spread a rumor that Sarah's promotion was unearned, planting fake evidence of her stealing company data. During a team meeting, he presented the fabricated proof, his voice smug. "She's a fraud," he declared, as co-workers murmured. Sarah's heart sank, but she stood tall. "Check the server logs," she said. "I've never touched those files." The IT team confirmed her innocence, but the damage was done. Her reputation was bruised. As she left the meeting, Michael caught her arm. "You're stronger than they know," he said, his voice low. "Let me help." Sarah shook her head. "I need to do this myself." That night, Michael dug deeper into his investigation. Clyde, his assistant, handed him a file, bank transfers, linking Robert to the hospital where Eleanor died. "It's enough to start building a case," Clyde said. Michael nodded, his resolve hardening. But, as he looked at Sarah laughing with Ethan over a board game, he knew he couldn't keep her in the dark much longer. The ring, the kidnapping, the truth about his identity, it was all converging. James and Robert were closing in, and Sarah was caught in their crosshairs. Michael vowed to protect her, even if it meant revealing who he really was. The Chicago winter had settled in, blanketing the city in a gray chill that mirrored the tension in Sarah Bennett's heart. It was early December, and the lights of Harper Enterprises headquarters glowed against the dusk, as Sarah sat at her desk, her fingers hovering over a keyboard she barely touched. The past weeks had been a whirlwind. Michael Harper, her husband of convenience, was not just a janitor, but the billionaire president of Harper Enterprises, and impossibly the father of her son Ethan, from a fleeting night 5 years ago. The revelation had shaken her, stirring a mix of anger, relief, and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. Sarah's hazel eyes flicked to a photo of Ethan on her desk, his gap-toothed grin a reminder of why she kept going. But trust was fragile, and Michael's secrets had cracked it. Meanwhile, James Carter and his father Robert loomed like shadows, their schemes threatening to unravel everything she'd fought for. Sarah's promotion to junior assistant had made her a target. James, now a manager with a bruised ego, had escalated his attacks, spreading lies about her competence. At a recent company meeting, he'd accused her of faking her project, his voice dripping with venom. "She's a dropout with no credentials," he'd said, smirking, as colleagues whispered. Sarah had defended herself, presenting her meticulously prepared bid, but the damage lingered. Clara, her former supervisor, fueled the gossip, sneering in the break room. "She's only here because of her husband." Sarah ignored them, focusing on her work, but the weight of their words pressed harder each day. At home, Michael was a steady presence, cooking dinners and reading superhero comics to Ethan, but his silence about his past gnawed at her. She wanted to trust him, but the ring, the one linking him to Ethan's birth, sat heavy in her pocket. a reminder of his hidden truths. Michael, meanwhile, was closing in on his own truth. As president of Harper Enterprises, he'd spent years building a global empire while secretly investigating his mother Eleanor's death. A hospital record uncovered by his assistant Clyde confirmed his suspicions Eleanor had been injected with an unapproved drug orchestrated by Robert Carter, his adoptive brother, to secure the family's wealth. James Robert's son was complicit, having drugged Michael 5 years ago to frame him as reckless and unfit to inherit. The night Michael met Sarah, he'd been drowning his grief in a bar, unaware of the setup. Now, with evidence mounting bank transfers, a nurse's testimony, and a paper trail, Michael was ready to confront them. But he had to protect Sarah and Ethan, who were unwittingly caught in Robert's crosshairs. He'd kept his identity secret to shield them, but the time for hiding was over. The turning point came at Harper Enterprises' annual gala held in a glittering downtown ballroom. Sarah, dressed in a simple navy dress, felt out of place among Chicago's elite. Michael, still posing as a janitor to most, wore a borrowed suit, his green eyes scanning the room. Ethan stayed with Sarah's father, Tom, who'd grudgingly accepted Michael, but still pushed for her to reconsider James. As Sarah mingled, James approached his smile predatory. "You're playing a dangerous game, Sarah," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. "Mike's a nobody. I'm meeting with the president tonight to secure a deal for Carter Industries. Join me or you'll lose everything." Sarah pulled away, her voice firm. "I'd rather lose it all than be with you." James's eyes darkened, but before he could respond, a hush fell over the room. The president of Harper Enterprises was about to speak. Michael took the stage, his presence commanding, despite his unassuming attire. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady, "tonight I reveal my true role. I'm Michael Harper, president of Harper Enterprises." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sarah's heart stopped. Her eyes locked on him. He wasn't just Ethan's father. He was the man who'd built this empire. Michael continued, "For years I've worked in the shadows to uncover a truth. My mother, Eleanor Harper, was murdered, and the culprits are here tonight." He pointed to Robert and James, who stood frozen near the bar. Robert Carter and his son James orchestrated her death to steal our family's legacy. I have proof, hospital records, financial transactions, and a witness. Clyde stepped forward, holding a folder. "These documents show Robert purchased illegal drugs, and James drugged me to discredit me." The room erupted in murmurs. Robert's face reddened, his voice booming. "Lies! He's jealous of my success," James chimed in. "He's framing us to take Carter Industries." But Michael was unfazed. He signaled to security, who escorted a frail woman onto the stage, a nurse from Eleanor's hospital. "I saw Robert with the syringe," she said, her voice trembling. "He paid me to stay quiet, but I kept a record." Sarah watched stunned as Michael presented bank statements and a handwritten log, irrefutable evidence. The crowd turned on Robert and James, their protests drowned out. Police, tipped off by Clyde, entered the ballroom, cuffing the pair. "You'll pay for this," Michael James shouted as he was led away. Robert, defeated, said nothing, his eyes hollow. Sarah's mind reeled. Michael stepped off the stage, approaching her. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you," he said softly. "I had to protect you and Ethan until I had proof." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, anger and awe colliding. "You let me think you were a nobody," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought I was supporting us while you were this." Michael took her hand, his touch warm. "I never meant to hurt you. I stayed because of you and Ethan. You're my home." Sarah pulled away, needing space. "I need to think," she said, turning to leave. Ethan, who'd snuck into the gala with Tom, ran to her, hugging her legs. "Mom, is Mike a superhero now?" Sarah forced a smile, her heart aching. "Maybe, kiddo." The next day, Sarah took Ethan to their favorite park, the wind biting, but the sun bright. Michael joined them, his billionaire status now public, but his demeanor unchanged. "I found this," he said, holding out the silver ring with the H engraving. "It was my mother's. I left it with you that night because, I don't know, it felt right. I didn't know about Ethan until you showed me yours." Sarah took the ring, her fingers trembling. "Why didn't you come back?" she asked. Michael's eyes clouded. "I was drugged that night, set up by James. I woke up in a hospital, then left for Europe to rebuild. I lost memories until I saw you again." Sarah nodded, the pieces clicking. "Ethan deserves to know you're his dad," she said. "But I need honesty, Michael. No more secrets." He nodded, his voice earnest. "I promise." They spent the afternoon with Ethan, who laughed as Michael pushed him on the swings. Sarah watched, her heart softening. Michael wasn't just a billionaire. He was the man who'd fixed Ethan's bike, who'd stood up to James, who'd risked everything for justice. That evening at their apartment, Sarah cooked dinner, and Michael set the table, the routine grounding them. "I'm promoting you to director," he said casually, passing the mashed potatoes. Sarah laughed, shaking her head. "I earned my spot, but thanks." Michael grinned, and for the first time Sarah felt they were a team. The story's lesson crystallized as they tucked Ethan into bed, his superhero drawings scattered around. Honesty, Sarah realized, was the foundation of love and family. Michael's wealth and power meant nothing without trust, and her own strength, forged through years of struggle, had carried her through. She'd faced judgment, betrayal, and danger, but she'd never given up. "You're my hero," Michael whispered as they stood in Ethan's doorway. Sarah smiled, squeezing his hand. "We're each other's." For the audience, the message was clear. True wealth lies in integrity and connection, not money or status. Sarah's journey taught that resilience and truth can overcome any obstacle, a lesson to carry beyond the page.